So firstly, the anti-gospel will weigh in on creation. We're going to look at it. Number two, at the rebellion, we're going to see that this is part of the anti-gospel. We're going to see that there's a religious program, a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 2. Yes. So let's have a look at what I'm suggesting to you now. I'm suggesting to you that the key points that Satan has weighed in on his anti-gospel is in creation, it's in the rebellion, and in 2 religious programs in history now I'm talking about. We'll have a look at the next phase after this. But what I want to point out to you is that effectively, therefore, much of the points of the rebellion, much of the points of the religious programs you're seeing now that I'm suggesting to you through Egypt and Rome and Greece, there are others, of course. I can't fit all of them. To break them all down is literally impossible because we'd have to keep a record of literally every religion that's ever been, and we can't even keep that because there's just too many to possibly even want to do that. What I am suggesting to you, in a summary, in a nutshell, is that all of these, apart from the one true religion of God, Judaism, that spawned into Christianity, all of these are part of the satanic counterfeit anti-gospel. So what I'm suggesting to you too is that the reason for the story of creation being in Moses' account, the reason for this rebellion account, the reason for all of these phases that we're seeing here is actually tracing Satan's gospel. Now that might sound weird because I'm suggesting to you therefore that Satan's gospel is in our Bible. I know that sounds freaky, but the message of Pharaoh, the message of what happens in Rome, what happens in Greece, again, going back, to the rebellion, to the Tower of Babel, this is all showing an anti-gospel slant as well. So we're meant to be seeing, and let's go back to it. What's the theme of our study? The seed wars. We can't possibly, how can God tell us in Genesis, hey, so there's going to be this war, and then only tell us part of the story? We can't really get perspective without that, can we? Without having both views. So beautifully, fantastically, as we're going to see, and hopefully this will change your perspective on Scripture, God is allowing us insight into both, and He's showing how these two buffet each other throughout history. But it's also at the same time showing His supremacy. God will show His supremacy through all of this. That's the point. At creation, the serpent tries to destroy mankind, yet he doesn't get it right. Okay, things go bad, but he doesn't ultimately destroy. The rebellion, what does God say? Oh well, let's scatter them. Let's confuse their languages. Satan doesn't win. What did Satan attempt with Pharaoh, with the time of the Pharaohs? To destroy Israel. Did he get it right? No. Did he get it right with Rome and Greece? No, he didn't get that right either. So, we're not done with the picture though yet, because what I want to make evident to you is that even in today, in westernized civilization, we are not unique. We are not new. I think a lot of Christians believe, they go to church and we've got this gospel and we kind of think we're doing something new, and we'll say God's doing something new. And we think technology puts us on the cutting edge of things. We think that we've left everyone in the past in the dust, and we are the most developed portion of world history that's ever been. It's a nice idea to think that. It's kind of like self-important, but it's not true. Solomon said there's nothing new. Everything will repeat itself. There's nothing new under the sun. So what I want to show you, and we can't go into absolute detail with this, there's a lot to explain this, but I'll try and touch on it. What I want to suggest to you is the following. So if you look at all of these now, the anti-gospel that runs throughout history, creation, rebellion, the religious programs, where Satan creates all these antichrist figures that will follow through from Babylon, of course. It starts there and it moves its way through. Here's the summary of it. Firstly, let me point this out. I forgot. what I must point out to you is that you've got to understand that in every generation, Satan has to rework things. What's one of the, I'm going to ask this question. What's one of the reasons why you believe Satan has to recycle and reuse ideas? Well, there's probably more than one reason.
Because he does, I don't know. I was going to say, isn't it because he doesn't know what God's ultimate plan is? So
There we
says
go.
keep
That's good enough, yes. Satan is finite. So Satan runs these programs. He can kind of take an educated guess what he think might happen. So what does he do? Okay, well, I know that a Messiah is coming. I know it's got to be a man. Oh my word, guys, check it out there. Eve just had a son. Let's kill him. Cain kills Abel. Did he win? No. So like, okay, so we've got some time. What are we going to do now? We need a program. We need a plan. We need to regroup. And out of that, ironically, comes the basis for Babylon, the building of the first city. And that's where it gets really interesting, because of what Satan does then. We'll look at that, at what Babylon attempts to do. The religious programs. When Pharaoh understands that a Messiah type of figure has to be born, what is it that makes Moses famous as a baby? What event makes Moses famous as a baby? He's put into the Nile in a basket. Why? Because Pharaoh's trying to kill the babies. Can you see predictable behavior here? And we'll find this throughout history. What happens in with Rome? What happened with Herod? When Jesus is born, what does Herod do? Tries to kill the babies. So again, let's regroup and get perspective here. Satan has to recycle his same ideas. So Satan's got this one agenda and he recycles it. What else did I tell you? Satan has to use God's designs, right? He has to use the program design that God has if he wants to try and do anything valuable. So he has to create anti-messiahs and do all of these things. It has to be the ongoing plan that Satan has to use. So he recycles his ideas. This is why you'll see that the picture of Nimrod in Semiramis will show up in every culture, as it does, under new names, of course. But it's part of the same satanic, anti-gospel, anti-Christ agenda. So Satan has to recycle and reuse his old ideas. That's the point there. The religious program for phase 3, westernized civilization. What I'm going to suggest to you is that the culture we have today that for the most part is called westernized civilization, which is what the whole world, most of the world aims to achieve, most of the world aims to mimic and have a piece of, is in fact a boxing up, a coming together of everything I've just pointed out to you, plus a few new items, a few very well designed, articulated, presented items. And you might see them in the box. Firstly, through books, education through books. And I mean, I've shown you the Da Vinci Code, yeah, but really any scientific journals. And I mean, you go into CNA, right next to the religious book section, what is there? Science. So you've got, like, in the Christian religious section, you've got, books about God being awesome. And then you go to the next little bookshelf, and what does it say? Richard Dawkins, The God Delusion. Huh? Really? Like side by side? Is this what we're doing? So education through books and stuff like that is a major tool for Satan. Music, and I'm not suggesting either that books and intelligence and study is wrong, not in and of itself. What did I tell you? Satan has to take what God has given. He has to work from that. Madonna, well, her name firstly, that is, she means to use it sacrilegiously. Rebel Heart. Now, this Rebel Heart tour has caused quite a stir for people. I think that part of the show design, I think it's this show that she does, part of the concept is desecrating the bride. Who does that have relevance to? How many people, groups, or whatever in this world could that possibly have reference to other than Christianity? Not really anyone, I think. I think it's a direct satanic slandering of Christ. Again, because Satan has to use God's design. And of course, there's many other examples of the music issue and the power of music and all of that we can go into. And thirdly, movies, videos, stuff like that. This Ancient Aliens is a series I've actually watched quite a lot of, and found a lot of it to be quite accurate and interesting, and also been grossed out by the terrible, deceptive perspective that it brings at the same time. These guys present the aliens as, beings that have made us and people that we shouldn't be afraid of. And that this is such a good education program for getting people ready for visitation from aliens. Quite frankly, if you ask me to summarize what this is good for, that's it. If you are trying to make people believe that, then this is the perfect program to do it for you. In fact, I've got to tell you, you must understand that they even take the Bible to be ancient alien theory. They will suggest to you that a lot of what you read in the Bible is ancient alien craft. It's really just technology, and that when they come back, we're going to see that Jesus is nothing other than an alien. And I'm being serious. I'm not kidding you now. And again, it's subversive programming. It's what Satan's doing. It's what he's attempting to do. Now, so the overview of our seed wars consideration. I want to show you this. Firstly, again, we're going to revisit the concept of what do I suggest is the picture of the gospel. This is always what's most important. Everything we do, everything we believe, everything that matters to us has to flow from this perspective. Okay? So nothing overrides this. This is what Scripture gives us. We trust it to be true. We understand God's not got any other agenda, any other plan, any other motivation to do anything else. This is it. Everything that we're going to take seriously has to happen within this framework or be rejected as false. But, so that's what we know. And we know this about Scripture and all of that already. We know that these elements are there. But what about this other program? And that's what we're trying to focus on tonight. Again, as I said, we understand who Jesus is, generally speaking. We cover that from many different angles, and we celebrate it, and that's fantastic. Coming up for Passover, we'll do the same again. We'll rehash what we know about the redemptive element of creation and all of that. And that is fantastic. So I'm not undermining how important that is. What I'm saying is let's take a different angle to get a fuller perspective and fill in some of the blanks, so to speak, in Scripture. So to do that, we're looking at the anti-gospel. And I want to show you that there's a few points under these things that we're going to look at: myths, gnosis, godlike, evolution. Remember, this is Satan's counteractive gospel that runs in parallel with these things that I want you to see. The Watchers, genetic tampering, Nephilim. We're just going to give broad overviews, but it's going to give you some perspective, I believe. Under the rebellion, we've got the anti-Messiah, we've got the counter-gospel, and we've got the codification of paganism. And finally, and this is a very reductionist thing, I've honed in on the Ishmael issue, so we might not get to that. We'll see how that goes, but we might just introduce something of that. I do have to be careful, so I want to be careful of that. So, next point that I wanted to show you. So again, let's just get perspective. We've got Scripture, we've got our gospel overview running on the top. Nothing overrides that. That is the blueprint for everything. and we never taking that out of the focus point. We've got the anti-gospel that I've given you a slight breakdown. Don't try and memorize it now, because we will look at it briefly, of what is going on under the surface. What's Satan's anti-agenda? What is the alternative seed aiming to do? The alternative seed is on a warpath. What is he doing? That's the question there. And then the tools that I'm suggesting, very overview kind of thing now again. Just some pictures to give you an idea of the kind of tools that Satan is using in his program. We've got Pharaoh representing the main religions that come around. Next, we have the all-seeing eye. This is the Illuminati, Freemasonry, mysticisms. Now, remember that Babylon is also called Mystery Babylon. What I want to suggest to you is that what we're going to try and uncover to some extent is to understand that you do need to be aware of some of the mysterious things happening around you, to have perspective on it at least, because this is what Jesus in Revelation calls Mystery Babylon. The mystical arts, the idea of occultism. I'm going to touch on it briefly. Again, I'm not saying we all need to be experts on it, but we need to get some perspective. Then we've got the DNA issue, which I'm going to give you some ideas about that I think you need to consider to be serious. Next up, does anyone know what that next symbol is? Of course, if you look at the pentagram, the satanic image next to it, the same image is superimposed onto that picture. But on its own, if you didn't know this, that is the symbol for, or the kind of symbol for the poster child, if you will, for alchemy. The mystical sciences of alchemy is represented by a logo like that. And we'll kind of see why that's important, why I've included that. Next up, of course, we've got spiritualism, meditation, yoga, all of that. You'll know that I've suggested from the creation account that the anti-gospel is going to have this concept of gnosis, this otherworldly perspective on reality and on things. And we're going to see something interesting there. And finally, the traditional picture of an alien. Again, whether or not you like it, it is something we've got to take serious, at least the concept of it. And I will try and explain kind of why. These are a sampling. Don't assume that this is an exhaustive list of what Satan is doing. I'm trying to keep it simple and visual in ways that might, help you retain what I'm trying to show you. So let's have let's see. Any questions or statements at this point before I move on?
Yeah, Darren, I wanted to ask something quickly. So you're going to still go through the watches and all that, like all these little...
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So
yeah,
I just want to...
It'll be brief overviews, and then I'll explain why, pointing to future documentaries that are coming that will be a lot more detailed. So,
okay, cool. Thanks.
We'll see about that. Okay, let's get started at the first part. Remember now, we are focusing on the Antichrist gospel agenda. Keep in mind always the main scripture, the main issue is the actual creation account, and then we look into this concept of the anti-gospel, and I'm saying, myths, gnosis, the godlike issue and evolution, and then we see the alchemy sign again, and the issue of meditation and so on. Now, what's crazily interesting, and you probably don't know this because we don't really get exposed to this, is that Satan, I said to you, Satan's going to have certain kinds of agendas. Some of his agenda is going to be to kind of co-opt the existing accounts of what God is doing, and some of them he's going to completely try and subvert it. And he'll do both at the same time. He's got no problem contradicting even himself because he's lying in any case. So what he does, how he lies, is really inconsequential. The question is, does it work? The question is, can he get strongholds in people's lives through doing this? And the answer is yes. Now, this is actual Luciferian philosophy. Do you understand this? Do you understand that Satanism has so many branches? It's so well developed. If you think Satanism is people chanting and stabbing animals or whatever, you're wrong. They are very well organized. Now, check this out as a summary of Luciferian philosophy. Watch her now. this is the example, and I'm going to ask somebody to point out what I've suggested previously that proves is going to be proven true by what I'm about to read to you now. Adam and Eve are held prisoner by an unjust God. Lucifer is used Satan, so Satan becomes supposedly an agent of Lucifer. Lucifer used Satan to set man free through intellectualism. And then finally, using intellect, man will conquer earth and nature and ascend to godlike status. Okay? So Adam and Eve are held prisoner by an unjust God. What this suggests is that the creation account is brought to light here, and it is allowed to stay intact. You get that? So it's suggesting, okay, creation account, sure, no problem. Lucifer sends Satan to help man through intellectualism, and through intellectualism, man will eventually conquer earth and nature, subdue nature in a different way. That's where alchemy comes in. Can I draw your attention back to the symbol of alchemy in the middle of that pentagram? Alchemy was the manipulation of base metals. I'm going to look a little bit more of that a little bit later, and hopefully you're going to join the dots. Can someone tell me what I've just read, what point does that prove about what I've suggested about the methodology of Satan? Can you tell me what it is, and can you point out the specific idea of how Satan is used?
That is like the scapegoat.
Okay, explain.
Like he's been done injustice almost.
Okay, sure. That's there. That's right. You're very right. That is part of the Luciferian philosophy. When they do take the gospel account or the Bible account to be true, when they don't deny the existence of God, they just suggest God is a bully. So yes, spot on. You're quite right. Anybody else with something to add? Yeah.
Darren, I see a picture here where God gave Adam and Eve the options or the choices in the garden, where he told them this is what he has laid down. Satan comes and takes a truth and sort of twists it to sound like he tells a lie to deceive them. So because it's similar, it appeals to our senses. So when I'm looking at it, if I want to do my own thing in life and I don't like God's authority over my life, I can't ignore what is obviously there in Scripture. So if Satan comes and he gives me a way out where I can rather choose intellectualism or creation worship or the Big Bang Theory because it better suits my lifestyle, I will prostitute my thinking to get a way out of God's restrictive oppression over what I want to do.
Yeah. That's right. And again,
I love this.
Jason pointed it out, you've now pointed it out too, that the fact is, before I say, let's see if anyone else wants to add. Does anyone else want to add to help?
I don't want to add, I just understand.
My question. Yes.
Who's talking? Is it me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that there was I love that, what your father just said.
Yeah.
That's so on the money where, like how people are today.
It is. The whole issue of intellectualism, and we can go on for hours about what spawns out of that. But that's exactly the Luciferian philosophy. So that can kind of pull a lot into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then just one thing that I've noticed is it just also shows you how things are twisted, because in the movie Noah, even though in all of those movies I don't believe in, but like those watchers supposedly still say, we saw the fall of man out of the garden and we came down to help them because we felt bad for them.
Yes.
because we felt bad for them, which just shows you they're trying to promote a biblical movie, but they're actually promoting a Luciferian, philosophy. Yeah.
Now, we're going to get into that too. Okay, anybody else want to add to that, to what Mark's? Yes.
Yeah, Darren, God's created us all with a sense of justice, but Satan can hijack that, and if he can get us to believe that God is unjust in the way he's dealing with whatever, like Adam and Eve, then it tries to elicit sympathy for Adam and Eve or the victims, or make them out to be victims, and in that way sort of get us to be anti-God.
Oh, absolutely. That again, that could form part of the Luciferian philosophy. Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's well said.
Yeah. In the new movie, the Jesus movie, I think it's the teenage Jesus. He's portrayed as rebellious. He does something which shows him to be disobeying his parents. And the Bible says clearly that he obeyed his parents in everything.
Wow. Okay.
Another way of showing that he disobeyed his parents. So it's a total disregard of the purity of Jesus as the Son of God.
So you're talking about the young Messiah, right?
Yeah, the young Messiah. In there, he's actually portrayed as being rebellious against his parents.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I still need to see that. So that's quite something.
Risen is a good one, though.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. Okay, so are we seeing? Yes, sorry, someone out there?
Yeah, it's Rosanna.
Yes.
I just want to take a couple of steps back quickly. Previously, you mentioned something about the devil recycling. What God created already. This just makes me think in the sense that Satan being one, Satan being one of the fallen angels or the high-ranking angel, he was never put in a position to create anything. And look at the accounts of the garden itself. If it was that he was in a position to create, he could have then done what he wanted to do by purely making Adam and Eve sin. But he didn't. He used the structure of manipulation. So at the end of the day, he knew that mankind had the free will of choice. And that is what he targeted all along. I mean, that goes right up until today as well. No one in essence, and please correct me if I'm wrong, no one in existence, for that matter, is taken over by what Satan wants to do. But he still uses manipulation by making things look all good and attractive. And that is how we make the choice. Because at the end of the day, I take it in the sense that Satan still stands as blameless, so to say, because if the father has to turn around and say, point fingers at Satan, Satan's got one hand to stand on, where he could turn around and say, but I didn't make them do it. They took the choice. They made the choice themselves to do it. So from the accounts of the garden itself, it all boils down to choice and manipulation.
Yeah, you see, look, Satan's first issue with God is his own rebellion against God. And for that, he was kicked out of heaven eternally and awaited the judgment. In the meantime, yes, he interfered with mankind through manipulation, but clearly God must hold him responsible because God issues judgment on Satan as well. So I hear what you're saying. He can't physically make their minds up for them, and that's obviously proved by the fact that they get judgment too. So they clearly are responsible for themselves. They can't point to anyone else, even though they did. Eve pointed to the serpent. They didn't exclude her from responsibility. But yes, Satan couldn't make them do anything. That's the big tragedy of the story. They really did do it themselves. And really themselves gave birth to what we call the Yetzirah, the evil inclination. And that evil inclination doesn't have Satan sitting with a joystick controlling it. We drive that. Satan is a lot less physically active in our lives than we'd like to believe. Because our own evil inclination operates. Yeah, he can at times, or through, demons and whatever, we use the term Satan, but Satan can't be with all of us all the time. He's a finite being. He can only be in one place at one time. And I'm sure none of us have been graced with his unholy presence ever. He's far too busy dealing with other things, and trust me, he's got things that he deals with. So clearly, there might be demonic activity, and sometimes it's our own stupidity that opens us up to that. So that's quite a different story altogether, actually. But what I want us to see now is, can we see that this Luciferian philosophy stretches quite far? The attempt at intellectualism, the concept of evolution, is a Luciferian philosophy. Satanism. Does that make sense? I'm not going out and telling you to go and tell your teachers, your kids' teachers at school teaching science, when they talk about evolution, that they're Satanists. Of course, there's a context here. They're just teaching content that they're told to teach, even if they do believe it themselves. I wouldn't advise us going out and making statements like that directly. The point is, I'm telling you that it is a satanic invention, and we might see a little bit more of it.